So after today's presentation, we can all go back to Nar Lokantası and have a nice Turkish meal because you will all get very hungry, probably. Well, my name is Banu Özden. Thank you very much for coming to listen to me, and hopefully you will enjoy this presentation. I'm sure you all know a lot about Turkish cuisine, so I will try to include some stories maybe you don't know, and that will keep it interesting. I would like to first talk a little bit about where I work. I work at the Culinary Arts Center, which is Yemek Sanatları Merkezi, or YESAM in short. It's located in the Nur Osmaniye building, and there we are working to preserve and promote Turkish cuisine. That's one of the things that we do there. And we also hold seminars like this every month, sometimes in Turkish, sometimes in English. And we also do food demonstrations, the most popular one being the akide şekeri demonstration. We have groups of usually foreigners coming in to watch the whole process of how akide şekeri, the traditional Turkish hard candy, is made, using the traditional Ottoman techniques, because we don't use any machines and everything is handmade, hand cut. You see over here our chef. This is our famous candy chef. You can find his pictures all over the internet. His name is Hüseyin Aksoy. He's just poured some candy mixture and he's going to start making the candy. And then over here you see the chefs making mantı, the traditional ground beef filled dumplings. And we also try to do some culinary tours around Turkey. Our most popular one is actually to the Ayvalık region, where we cooperate with Nar Gourmet, and we visit there during the olive harvesting season, and we visit the olive groves and we visit the olive oil factories. We eat a lot of wonderful dishes all made with olive oil, and we also visit some museums that have our antique olive oil making equipment. This was another tour that we did privately. Actually, it was more like a research tour to Sparta with my friends at the Bora Travel. So we went there to see the rose harvesting season and how it takes place, and we visited a lot of different rose gardens, lots of rose smell around in the air. And well, today's talk is generally about the history of Turkish cuisine, so I will take you way back to Central Asia. Starting with Central Asia all the way until today, the Turkish people have lived in a very great geography, and this vast geography and the different kind of soils that they came across, and also different kinds of climates, enabled them to have a very, very rich cuisine, and therefore it's considered in the top 3 in the world. And usually when I do this presentation, I always included these 3 pictures on purpose, because when people think about Turkish cuisine, I think most of the time what they think is baklava, which could be a controversial food, and then also the dolma, which is the stuffed grape leaves, another controversial food, and then the typical döner, the famous fast food of all the European countries, known as the Turkish food. But there's so much more to it than that. So this is the Central Asia, and this is generally the area where Turks lived. And during that time, there were, of course, no definite borders, so they were kind of wandering around. They were nomads, mostly on horseback, and they were their food consisted mainly from the animal products that was sustained in their immediate environment. So their food was based on mostly meat or dairies. And these are the types of meat that they consumed. Among these, the horse meat is the most interesting one, and that was the one that was given up after especially Turks accepted Muslim as religion. And horse meat was actually usually eaten for celebratory occasions or to celebrate the beginning of spring. Because it's very high in calories, it gives them a lot of energy, so that was one of the main reasons why they ate it. Among the dairies that they consumed, kumis is an interesting one, which is not really consumed anymore, and that's kumis, which is the fermented mare's milk. Mare's milk is very high in sugar, so it's easy to ferment and then become alcoholic. So that was like their popular alcoholic beverage that they used for celebrations. And then, of course, yogurt, which is I am very proud to say Turkey's culinary contribution to the world, because Turks were the ones who kind of invented yogurt, and they use it for many different ways. So you can eat yogurt as is, usually accompanying a meal that goes well with yogurt. But one of the things that the Central Asian Turks did was make kurut. Kurut is actually dried up yogurt. So because they were always on horseback and they needed to transport their food with them, the easiest way to do that would be to dry up the yogurt with a little bit of salt until it became a rock-hard consistency. I'm sure you've seen this, yes?
Kesh.
Kesh, yes, exactly. So they would carry this with them whenever they traveled. They use yogurt a lot in their soups and stews. This adds extra body to the soups and stews, and also gives all the minerals. And a meal like this, which consists of legumes and meat, or sometimes rice and wheat, is actually just a meal on its own that has everything that all the nutrition that the body would need. And then another interesting thing that you can make with yogurt is tarhana, and tarhana is probably the first instant soup in the world. Tarhana is made from yogurt mixed with spices, and then nowadays there's onions and tomatoes also added into the mixture, and there's many different types of tarhana. I am not going to go into that because there's many different types of tarhana found all over Anatolia, but here are just two different kinds. This is the flakes of tarhana, and then these are also sometimes served as chips in bars. It goes well with the hard liquor, and which is quite irrelevant. And then also the granules, which in both cases you just melt it in water and then just stir it while you're cooking it. You need to stir it, otherwise it will stick to the bottom of the pot. For about 20 minutes you have a very nice nutritious soup, and this is a popular winter preparation done in the villages. So in the summertime these yogurt mixtures are dried up in the sun and on large bed sheets, and then either they make little rock-like pieces, or they make flakes like this, or granules once they pass the dried up tarhana through the food processor, and then you can keep it in jars all winter long. Once Turks started settling a little bit, then they also did a little bit of agriculture, and generally they planted millet, barley, rye, oats, and rice, but the most important staple for the Turks was wheat, and wheat was actually used to make the type of bread that they made, which was like yufka. So it's this flat bread that they made, that looks like this, which was just consisted of water, flour, wheat flour, and salt, and this mixture would be stretched out, cooked on metal tin sheets with fire underneath, and then once it's cooked, it's easily transportable. It's very light to carry. In fact, they also carried that tin metal sheets on the back of their horses, so they were known to carry their ovens on the back of their horses. And of course, this cooks very quickly. It doesn't need to leaven, so it's a very simple and easy way to eat bread. And of course, I can also say that Turks were probably the inventors of the first wrap, as we know it today, or we call it dürüm in Turkish. Because they also ate meat, they would put the meat inside this bread, roll it up, and ate it. And the word dürüm comes from the verb dürmek, which means to roll. So that's the name, hence the name dürüm. Once the conditions in Central Asia became unstable for Turks to live, they started their move towards the west. And some of them have stayed closer to Anatolia, some have stayed in Anatolia, and some have passed through Anatolia. And the ones that lived in Anatolia, among all of them, the most influential and the most powerful, significant state was the Anatolian Seljuks. Once they settled in Anatolia, they were exposed to different kinds of ingredients, different kind of climate, different kind of soil, that they incorporate into their cuisine. So their very, very simple cuisine became a little bit more complex. They started consuming vegetables and fruits, which was interesting for them. And one of the interesting things, the two sources that we have from this time period is 2 books where we get all of our information from. One of them is Divan-ı Lügat-ı Türk, which is actually Arabic-Turkish dictionary. But in this dictionary, there are a lot of Turkish words, the food words that explain what things are. And when they're explaining, they're kind of giving a little bit of a very basic recipe, just explaining how it's made. So it's a very valuable resource. And the other one is Hutat Kubilik, which translates as wisdom, which brings good fortune. It was written by Yusuf Hashaji. And this book is more like a sociology book that talks about the way people live and table etiquette and just the social behavior. So it also gives a lot of information about the way food is consumed and feast preparations and basically table etiquette. So during the Anatolian Selçuk time, the most influential person, as you already know, is Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi. He's a 13th century Muslim saint. And after his death, to follow up with his beliefs and what he was trying to accomplish, the Dervish Lodge was established. And this was actually, the Mevlevi sect established the Dervish Lodge, and that way they could become, they could train Mevlevis, and they could train them basically. In order to become a Mevlevi, a kid usually would have to pledge their allegiance to the chief of the kitchen first. And if they were accepted in the first part, for 3 days they would sit at the entrance of the kitchen, just watching what's going on in the kitchen and the workings of the kitchen. If they passed that stage, then for 18 days they would be sent to run errands, the same errands every day, wearing the same clothes that they arrived in. And if they were to be able to achieve that, then they would start their actual training, which would be called ordeal, or çile in Turkish, which would take 1001 days, and it would take place in the kitchen. And that's when they would receive their wide skirted garments and start working. And they were very disciplined. It's very important because the Mevlevis gave a lot of importance to the kitchen and the discipline within the kitchen, because that's the base of everything for them. So for 1001 days, they were measured for their patience, endurance, and obedience, which was very important. And during that time, if they misbehaved at any of this training time, if they misbehaved, if they were not suitable for the job, at the end of the day, their shoes would be placed in front of the door with the tip facing outside, meaning that they should leave. Or if they had done misconduct, then they would be let go from the back door, which was called the door of insolence, because they were dishonest and they didn't respect the workings of the lodge. Okay, I'm missing a slide here, I'm sorry. Sorry. This is what you see here, and I wanted to talk about another important person from that time period, is the tomb of Ateşbazı Veli. And Ateşbazı Veli is known to be the first and probably the only person, only chef in the world to have a tomb to his name, and it's located in Konya. And it's a pilgrimage for anybody who cooks to go there, because then they will, be blessed. And they have a special kind of salt that is distributed there. And if you take a piece of that salt and bring it back home and mix it with the salt you have back home, it will bring prosperity to your household. This person, Ateşbazı Veli, is actually the private chef of Mevlana, and his original name is Yusuf Şemseddin. He took on the name Ateşbaz when one day there were no firewood to make any fire. So he went up to Mevlana and said, "There's no fire left." So Mevlana told him that you should just put your feet underneath the cauldron and it will light up. So with a little dot in his head, he went and he put his feet under the cauldron, and it lit up really. But because he had doubts about what Mevlana said, his left toe burned. So when this was reported back to Mevlana, he said, "Oh, why did you doubt me? Hi Ateşbaz, hi." And then and this was also resembled in when the dervishes, they start their prayers, They usually start with one feet on top of the other because he was kind of ashamed of Mevlana seeing his toe, his burnt toe. This is to symbolize that, so they do that before they start their Sema shows. So with the fall of the Anatolian Seljuks, Anatolia was divided into many small principalities, and among these principalities, one of them, the Ottoman Principality, became the most powerful one, and they started taking over the other ones, and they established the Ottoman country in 1299, and they were located right around here, and their capital became Bursa after Suud. And Ottomans, this map shows you the Ottoman Empire when it's at its height. So as you can see, it covered all 3 continents. Especially they started moving forward once they conquered Istanbul in 1453. And the Sultan at the time, Fatih